Hello and welcome. I'm Pam Giganti. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Living in South Florida has its perks, especially this time of the year when many parts of the nation are shoveling snow. But it also has its problems. Two of the biggest are affordable housing and sea level rise. In fact, Greater Miami leads the nation in the highest percentage of renters who spend more than half of their income on housing. Couple that with the threat of rising seas, and residents are at great risk. But the University of Miami's Housing Solutions Lab is working to try and fix this. With a new $300,000 grant from JP Morgan, they'll research the impact both of these issues have together on residents. The goal is to provide data and recommendations to developers, city planners, landlords, and the like about how to create safe, affordable dwellings. Here to share more is Dr. Robin Backen, Assistant Provost of UM's Department of Civic and Community Engagement. Dr. Backen, great to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so let's talk about this project, if you will. And you were telling me when we were talking about it that it's really in its infancy. You just got the grant and you're really starting to look at this whole issue of sea level rise as it pertains to affordable housing. So talk about this.
Sure, so exactly, as you said, two of our biggest issues that we confront here are affordable housing and sea level rise. But up until now, they've really been discussed in parallel, but not in concert. So we've been working for several years on affordable housing issues, specifically providing data and visualization and mapping around the cost burden across South Florida and thinking about policy solutions to help improve our affordable housing. But now we want to add a conversation around sea level rise so that we can really create urban resilience strategies that are equitable and inclusive and focus explicitly on what we can do here locally to preserve our affordable housing and make it resilient.
So eventually, what does that look like? Because I know that this is going to be public information that's going to be made public on a platform on the web that is accessible to anyone who's interested in sustainable housing, developing homes, et cetera. So talk about that piece of it.
Right, so what we've already done for affordable housing is created this online mapping tool called MAP, or the Miami Affordability Project.
And we have a picture of it right there. What are the purple and pink dots?
So the purple and pink dots are public and assisted housing. And so you can click on any of those dots and get all the information that you need about that particular project. So who does it serve? What are its vacancy rates? When will it cycle out of affordability, which is a very important data point, because we're set to lose close to 3,000 units of affordable housing by the year 2020, because those units could potentially revert to market rate housing. So we want to create solutions that are going to help preserve the existing affordable housing we have, retrofit it so that it can withstand flooding, storm surge, and sea level rise, and then think about new building strategies that can make the new buildings that come online more resilient.
And I think all of us, it's easy for us to understand new buildings and how to make those buildings resilient. But talk about the sea level rise aspect and buildings that already exist. I mean, our coastal areas are already well built. They're inland areas. We've always, for many years, until they put the pumps in Sweetwater, it would flood a lot during the rainy season. So what do you do to buildings that already exist?
Right, so the goal really among everyone who's looking at resilience and sea level rise, particularly the chief resilience officers for the cities and the county, is to think both about mitigation and adaptation. So certainly we want to think about how we can protect against increased burning of fossil fuels that we know ignites climate change. There are natural solutions that can be implemented to really help offset some of the worst storm surge. So for example, restoring coral reefs, restoring mangroves. These have a tremendous benefit in terms of mitigating against some of the most damaging effects of storm surge, creating a greater tree canopy to help absorb some rainwater. These are all solutions that will be put in place in addition to pumps, seawalls, and also looking at building footprints. So Miami-Dade County is developing an online platform where you can actually look at building footprints and understand what their particular elevation is, not just of a neighborhood, but of an individual building. So we could think about what would it take to raise that building? Is there a way to create a structure underneath that would help absorb some runoff of stormwater.
Right.
So we're working in collaboration with a structural engineer from UM's College of Engineering.
Okay.
We're also working with a climate scientist who has done work on mapping flooding and sea level rise, and we're going to be working with a risk mitigation and insurance consultant to think about what that looks like longer term in terms of assessing risk.
Right, and one of the things you and I talked about are the number of partners involved here. I know you're
Right.
also working with the University of Florida as
Yes.
well on this. So we're looking at it as a statewide issue, not really just for South Florida, right?
Right, so we know, for example, that Florida is the state that stands to lose the most coastal property as a result of sea level rise. So it's estimated that by 2100, we will potentially lose about 1 million homes as a result of sea level rise throughout the state. So we work very collaboratively with the Schimberg Center at the University of Florida, who collects data on housing at the state level. And then we're also working with local stakeholders. So not just the chief resilience officers, but those local not-for-profits who are doing so much to raise awareness about climate change and sea level rise. So the Clio Institute that does public trainings on understanding sea level rise. Catalyst Miami is working on neighborhood urban resilience. Miami Waterkeepers is thinking about how we protect the Biscayne Aquifer and our water supply system. So there are lots of local organizations where we're bringing them to the table to think not just about what's the data and what are the engineering and technical solutions, but also how can these solutions best be implemented at the neighborhood level with resident input, and really getting people to understand the role that they individually can play in the process.
Yeah, and one of the statistics I was reading is that it says it's estimated the potential financial losses of $278 billion just due to sea level rise. I mean, that's
right, exactly.
astronomical.
And that's not just property loss, but if you think about our major economic drivers, two of them are tourism and agriculture.
Yeah.
So when we think about the impacts of sea level rise and flooding, and also more dramatic weather events, so more extreme heat, more dramatic impacts from hurricanes, that's going to have a devastating effect on those industries.
And so quickly before we go back to the affordable housing piece, because you've been working on that for a little while.
Right.
What kind of inroads are we making there? Because you said some of those homes will fall out of being considered affordable.
Right, so partly what we've tried to do with our Miami Housing Solutions Lab is to suggest specific policy solutions for different neighborhoods. So we've looked at best practices nationwide and then thought about how they can be implemented here locally. So for example, preserving existing affordable housing is something we want to look into. We're working very closely with Miami Homes for All on that project, as well as with the county's Department of Public Housing and Community Development. We also want to think about what's called naturally occurring affordable housing. This is market rate housing that just happens to be affordable. There's a lot of that kind of housing right now in Alapata, in Little Havana. So how can we work with homeowners to get them to think about improving their properties, rehabbing their properties, but making it affordable to them?
Absolutely. It was great to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
It's
best
been a
of
pleasure.
luck on this next piece of the project.
Thank you.
All right, keep us posted. And are you concerned about sea level rise and its impact on housing here in South Florida? We'd love to hear from you. Send us your take on this or any topic that's important to you. You can always reach us by email or Twitter or Facebook @YourSouthFL. Leave us a comment or post a video. As always, we look forward to hearing from you.